Praise be to God. Today's Bible reading portion is taken from Exodus chapter 35, 36 and 37. In chapter 35, again it talks about the additional instructions for keeping the Sabbath day. In yesterday's chapter, we had concluded by saying how God stressed on the importance of abiding on the laws on the Sabbath day. Now, in chapter 35, he continues to give some additional instructions for keeping the Sabbath day holy. Moses gathered all the Israelites to him and shared the laws of the Lord he received on the top of Mount Sinai. Now, in regards to the Sabbath, the Israelites were to work 6 days and rest on the 7th day. They were not even allowed to kindle a fire in the home on the Sabbath, and anyone who was caught breaking the Sabbath was to be put to death. In verses 4 to 29, Moses invited anyone who had generous heart to contribute certain things for the tabernacle. Now he had invited everyone to contribute gold, silver, bronze, blue and purple scarlet yarn, fine twined linen, goat's hair, ram skin, acacia wood, oil, spices, precious stones to be part of the Lord's tabernacle. He also invited any craftsmen among the people to volunteer for their skills to build the parts of the sanctuary. Now verses 11 to 19, it lists all the important pieces of the tabernacle as God described to them to Moses on Mount Sinai. We have been dealing on all the instructions given by God in the previous chapters this week. Now, while Moses ordered the people to give their contributions, people gave very generously both their possessions and their talents. In the previous chapters, we could see how Bezalel and Oholiab were chosen as 2 men who were specially abled with intelligence and craftsmanship to work on the tabernacle. In verses 30 to 35, both of them were empowered by the Spirit of God to devise artistic designs to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, in carving wood, and for working in every skilled craft. Now, these men were also inspired to teach others how to create the necessary articles for the tabernacle. This brings us to the end of chapter 35, where again the 2 abled men are helping in building up this tabernacle. In chapter 36, we can see this taking place where Moses and Israelites were camped at Mount Sinai, but now they are preparing to depart as per God's instructions. From the beginning of chapter 22, we could see whatever happened at the foot of Mount Sinai and every single order that God gave to Moses. In chapter 36, now we can see that the Israelites and Moses were preparing to depart from there. Chapter 36, verses 1 to 7. Now Moses gathered Bezalel and Oholiab and all the craftsmen and asked them to begin their work on the tabernacle. As they worked, the Israelites continued bringing contributions until the craftsmen had more than enough. The people were so generous in their free will offerings that Moses had to command them to stop. Verses 8 until 38, we can see how the men made the tabernacle from 10 curtains of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and each curtain was 28 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. Certain details of the curtains. Now the curtains were connected in the middle with 50 clasps of gold, and the tabernacle also included a covering of tanned animal skins. There were 20 frames from the north and south side and 8 frames on the west side, and these frames and the crossbars were all overlaid with gold. The veil of blue, scarlet, purple, and yarn with fine linen were also created to separate the holy place from the most holy place. And the veil had certain depictions of cherubim woven into it and hung on 4 pillars, again overlaid with gold. This brings us again to the end of chapter 36. In chapter 37, God talks on how the making of the Ark of the Covenant starts. In verses 1 to 9, Bezalel made the Ark of the Covenant from acacia wood and covered it with gold. Next, he made a mercy seat again with pure gold, which was to sit on top of the ark. On top of the mercy seat, he built 2 cherubim figures whose wings spread across the ark and touched in the middle. Verses from 10 to 16, he made a golden table for the holy place in the tabernacle, and this table was made of acacia wood again with gold. It was 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits tall. Now a ring was attached to the corner of each leg so that the table could be carried with poles similar to those that used for the Ark of the Covenant. This brings us to the last part of chapter 37, where Bezalel makes a lampstand for the tabernacle from 1 solid piece of gold. Moving from there, verses 25, he makes an altar of incense that was to sit in front of the veil in the tabernacle, and this altar was to be made of acacia wood overlaid with gold. It was 1 cubit long, 1 cubit wide, and 2 cubits tall with horns of gold. It had 4 rings, 2 on each side, so it could be carried with 2 poles. Finally, in this chapter, Bezalel made the anointing oil and special incense for burning in the tabernacle. Now that's all the instructions as given to Bezalel through Moses from God on building the Ark of the Covenant, the golden lampstand, and the various other things that God instructs in chapter 37. And I hope God speaks to each one of you all. Thanks again for listening, and God bless.